Right, so I'd like to go over the next task. So if you've created your template of your brochure in InDesign, however, you weren't doing a tri-fold, maybe you were creating a custom fold. I'd like to go over with you how you can approach this. So let's pretend like, just open my toolbar here. Let's pretend like this was a trifold that folded in half. What you can do is open up your rulers by doing Control R and pull down from the top ruler and pull a guideline out. Before you do, one thing I would do is just change your preferences. So let me quickly, I know I showed you how to do this before. You go to Preferences, Units and Increments, and I'm going to change this to inches. So it's just easier for me to read. So now I'm going to pick up this guideline. I'm going to make it 4 1/4 because the height is 8 1/2. So half of 8 1/2 is 4 1/4. And I'm also going to add in my margins. As well. And what I also might do actually is just put guidelines between my folds so you can see where the fold would actually be as opposed to where the information should rest. The information should rest within these red lines, and the fold would be where I just placed that guideline. You want to do the same for the other page because remember you have your front and back page that you're working on here. Oops, okay. One guideline. Doesn't want me to pick it up right now. See if I can get another one. Okay. So I don't know, my guideline is not letting me pull from the top, but it's fine for this video. I don't really need you to see that, so I'll figure that out later. Anyway, so now this would be how you could set up your brochure by adding in other guidelines. Now let's say you had a line that was curved, or maybe you had a cutout. How would you go about creating this? So my suggestion would be blocking it out. So let's say that like this here, right here, I was going to cut this piece out here. What I would personally do is after you create your guidelines, I would take the shape tool and just put a shape over this. Okay. Bear with me here. I have like nothing open right now. Okay. And just fill it in with black, maybe make it gray, right? So that it's just easier to read now. Now I can really see what's being cut out and what I'm keeping. I'm keeping this like backwards L. Now, if I were going to repeat this on the opposite side, with your brochure, whatever happens on one side, it's going to be the complete opposite on the other. So let me just show you. I'm going to copy and paste this shape. And instead of it going here on the back page, it's going to go here because it's going to be the reflection of or the opposite of. Okay, so you can see that if my brochure was this L-shaped, one side would look like this and the other side would be the opposite, but look exactly the same. Mirror image. So you really want to make sure that you do this. Now let's say that my brochure had a really unique cutout. What I would do is take your pen tool and after you measure your prototype, go in and use your pen tool to create that shape. And you could even fill that shape in by connecting it. Make it black. Okay. And I could do something like that. Now, what I would do is copy and paste this. Again, bring it down here. Now remember, it's going to be opposite. So what I'm going to do is just flip it. Just make sure it's the same. Okay. And you can see now when I bring this in, what's happening here is happening over here, but it's just opposite. So keep all of this in mind. Now let's say that I was ready to start coloring this in. How would I approach this? Well, one thing I would definitely do is make sure that you organize your layers. I would maybe start with this first one being like, call it setup, right? Because you're setting up your grid, right? So everything that I've done is in this layer. Now I'm going to lock it because I really don't want to touch it. Actually, I don't want to touch it right now. Then I create a new layer, maybe label it background color, right? And this is where I would maybe start adding in color into my background. Now, the reason I hesitated before was because with your setup, you might want to add some of your background color and setup together. So I would kind of, you know, figure it out as you're working what works best for you. So what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to, let's say I wanted my whole background to be, I don't know, maybe like a light gray. What I'm going to do is I'm going to block it in with the shape tool. And you can obviously pick your color, but I'm just, for the purpose of this, just selecting black, and I'm going to make it like a lighter gray. Okay. Now, this is on top of my setup, so I might actually take my rectangle and move this into my setup and not keep it in my background. In fact, I might do most of my background in my setup. So again, like I said, depending on how you're working, you got to figure out how you're going to organize your layers. Maybe I want to have stripes and lines running through my brochure. Maybe I'm going to do this white. Remember, I was basing it off of like Helvetica. Maybe I'm going to do a black line, and maybe I'll do a little red line. Right. Maybe my front cover is going to be white. So again, I'm going to put this shape in the background. Okay. All right, so, you know, in my case, I really didn't use the background color that much. Maybe I'll use this for, maybe I'll call it background visuals, and any pictures that I add to it, I might put in here. And then maybe I would do another layer and name it text, right? All the text that I add to my brochure, right? It's also good to kind of zoom in, zoom out. But I think it's good to kind of organize and break up your layers so that you can lock them. So if you're working on something else, you can you know, really focus on just that. So if I wanted to add text, then I can go in and I can start adding my text as needed. Right, and I know this is, I'm not even sure if I have Helvetica on my computer. Oh, I do. Look at that. Okay. Remember, you can play around with your kerning, so if you want to space your text, again, it works very similar to Illustrator. I know we've been working in Illustrator a lot. So, right, and then I can kind of figure out from here what I'm going to do. So this is kind of a simple setup. I know that like any pictures that you do and you maybe color correct or cut and paste or alter in like Illustrator or Photoshop, you can just bring them right into InDesign. And this will be your like final format. So I would maybe save this as your final InDesign file, and anything else you do, just label it as whatever it is. I will try to make another video that goes over a little bit extra details, like maybe if you wanted a little review, if you wanted your text to warp, if you wanted to have text that maybe instead of on a straight plane, maybe you wanted to wrap around something, how you would do that again, and so forth. I hope you found this helpful, and that's it.